Mandy threw herself across the bed and sobbed as if her heart would break. Hearing the sound of voices, Jed stepped out to the window of the dormitory room and looked down. A group of boys were playing stickball, while 4 smaller boys were playing on the seesaws. Jed studied the boys. 2 of the boys on the seesaws looked as if they could be as young as 5 years old. 3 of the bigger boys in the stickball game looked like they were maybe 14 or 15, maybe even 16 years old, but several seemed to be about his age. Reassured, he headed for the stairs. Passing through the dining hall, Jed paused at the back door. He took a deep breath and stepped timidly out onto the playground, holding his head high and doing his best to appear confident. Jed sauntered past the swing set and headed for the backside of the playground. He hoped that someone would call to him, inviting him to participate in the stickball game. But he reached the backside of the playground without such an invitation. He glanced back toward the stickball game. A tall, slender boy was winding up for a pitch. The game was continuing as usual. It was as if the other boys had never even noticed him. Jed sighed. He discovered that the row of shrubbery at the backside of the playground concealed an abrupt drop-off about 7 or 8 feet high. Pushing his way through the bushes, he looked over the embankment. The area below was a tangle of waist-high weeds, twisted brambles, and small trees. A small creek trickled lazily along, barely visible through the dense vegetation. Jed's heart leaped. Here was a place to be alone. He slid carefully down the embankment and dropped to a seat on a large outcropping of granite in the shade of a weeping willow tree. A long sigh gave vent to his emotions. "Oh, it's not going to be easy to make friends around here," he said aloud. "I can see that right now." A small chunk of light-colored wood lay at his feet. He leaned over and picked it up. Glancing around to be certain he was not being observed, he drew the pocket knife from his sock and opened the blade. He studied the stick of wood for a few moments. A chipmunk, he decided. There's a chipmunk in this wood just waiting for me to bring him out. The stickball game, the orphanage, and even the loss of his ma and pa were all temporarily forgotten as the lonely boy began to carve. The sharp blade moved swiftly in his skilled hands, and the shavings began to fall in a little pile at his feet. Within minutes, the form of a lively little chipmunk began to emerge from the wood. Jed stopped for a moment and critically examined the little creature from several angles. The chipmunk was coming to life, and Jed was pleased. "Hi, what you doing?" Jed looked up, startled, to see a stocky boy with blonde hair and an incredible number of freckles standing just a few feet away. The boy's grin was friendly and genuine. His right forefinger was thrust between the pages of the book he held in his hand, marking his place. The boy took a step forward. "Hi, I'm Henry Sweeney." Jed stood to his feet, dropping the knife into his pocket without closing the blade, and thrusting the chipmunk behind his back. "I'm Jed Barrett," he said, extending his hand. "It's sure good to see a friendly face." Henry gave him an understanding smile as they shook hands. "I know how you feel," he said quietly. "It's not easy being the new kid." Jed immediately felt drawn to the cheerful boy. "I was hoping to get to play stickball with the guys," he said quietly, "but no one invited me, and I wasn't going to just barge in and assume they would want me, you know." Henry nodded. "I know what you mean. I've been there over 3 years now, and nobody's even asked me. Actually, it's just been this last year or so that I've been accepted by the other guys." He glanced at his book, noting the page number, and then pulled his finger from between the pages. He dropped to a seat on the granite. "We've got a few minutes before the lunch bell. Let's talk. Where are you from?" Jed sat beside him with the chipmunk still concealed behind his back. "Possum Creek. It's about 15 miles from here." "Where are your folks?" The boy wasn't being nosy. He just seemed genuinely interested. and Jed found himself opening up to him. Before he knew it, he was telling the story of losing Ma and Pa, having Wolf taken away from him, and the abrupt trip to the orphanage. 2 or 3 times, as he talked, he almost broke into tears, and he was barely able to keep from doing so. But it seemed that it would not have mattered much, even if he had. He didn't think Henry would have made fun of him at all. "Wolf," the boy said in amusement, when Jed had finished his story. "That's a funny name for a dog." "If you could see him, you'd know why we called him Wolf," Jed replied. "He's huge. People say that he's almost as big as a horse. Well, you know, he isn't really, but they always say that. I guess he's the biggest dog I've ever seen." "Where did you get him?" "Pa brought him home when he was just a puppy. He had bought him from a trapper. I don't think even Pa had any idea how big he was going to get." Henry laughed. "Sure sounds like a big dog." Jed laughed too. "He is. I wish I had him here now. I'd have a friend." Henry pondered the remark. "What were you making when I came down? It looked like you were carving something." Jed hesitated and then drew the chipmunk from behind his back. "It's not finished. I've just been working on it for a few minutes." Henry reached out and gently took the carving from him, holding it as if it were made of fragile glass. His eyes mirrored his astonishment. "Jed, that's incredible! It's a chipmunk! It's just incredible! How did you learn to carve like this?" Jed shrugged his shoulders. "Oh, Pa taught me." He reached for the carving. It's not finished yet." "I know, but the form is perfect. I've never seen anything like it." Jed drew his knife from his pocket and closed the blade. "Don't tell anyone that I have a knife, okay? It belonged to Pa, and if they take it away, I won't have anything to carve with." Henry shrugged. "I can keep a secret." A bell began to ring just about then, and Henry jumped to his feet. "There's the lunch bell. Time to line up. If we're late, we're in big trouble." As the 2 boys scrambled back up the embankment, Jed felt a warm glow inside. He had found a friend. He had seen enough already to know that life at Charity Home would never be pleasant. But now that he had a friend, perhaps it would be at least tolerable.